Our rules are simple, but the challenge is great. No shoulder pets, tames that can be carried, or typical boss dinos allowed. That means no Rexes, Therazinos, or any other dinos people normally use in these fights. Equipped with official server cap saddles, our 19 contenders will be backed by the commanding presence of a loyal Uteranus providing that extra boost. All competitors will go into battle with food to provide a healing effect. Herbivores will have plenty of sweet veggie cakes, and carnivores and omnivores will have cooked meat. I won't be using the Overseer because the movement speed required to get through the tech cave and then chase the Overseer during the fight would shorten our list by a lot. It's important to note that the tames in this series aren't typically used during boss battles because the amount of mutations you need to make them competitive, but all the dinos competing will have around 23,000 health and 1200% melee. This will give them all a fair shot at defeating at least one of the guardians. It won't always be feasible to reach these stats depending on the dinos I'm using, but I will let you know the amount of mutations and levels it took in order to reach it. All competitors start out with 50 base health and melee, and 40 points in everything else before I apply mutations and experience levels. You can decide on your own servers if it's worth pursuing. Competitors are required to fight the Megapithecus, Broodmother, then the Dragon on all difficulties starting with Gamma, then Beta, finishing with Alpha. Their success will be annotated on this scorecard with a pass or fail system. Now let's introduce our competitor and see if they have what it takes. Chalicotherium. This beer-guzzling cow, sloth, horse, bear thing is a massively overlooked creature by most. They love beer and throw rocks, so what's not to love? This drunk cow is very territorial and is typically found walking around the woods very slowly, but don't let their lazy demeanor fool you. To achieve these stats, I needed 40 mutations and 50 levels. 25 mutations and 10 experience levels went into health, and 15 mutations and 40 experience levels went into melee. Let's see how this odd herbivore performs in the arena. For the first boss of the evening, I fire up the green portal and head into Monkeyland. The Gamma Megapithecus is the weakest boss on the island, and it really shows here. Right off the bat, I notice that the Calicos are getting blasted around the arena pretty easily. One of them even got shoved off the cliff by a small group of Gigantopithecus. If you look towards the top of the screen, you'll witness this senseless murder. Now real talk, are you seeing these damage numbers? The rocks that the Calicos throw do a ton of damage. Maybe the Megapithecus could learn a thing or two about rock chucking from these guys, because he couldn't handle what the horse cow squad brought to the table and they crushed him, earning their first pass. I don't think the amount of damage that these freaks just dished out sunk in yet. I'm known to be pretty thick-headed, but it wasn't until this fight against the Gamma Broodmother that made me wondering where these donkey sloths have been my whole life. That rock toss is just nasty, and it can damage more than one thing, so it frequently took out some of the boss minions unintentionally. The Gamma Broodmother didn't last long as she was getting gnawed on by these vicious herbivores. Chalk up another easy victory and slap another pass on the board. The Gamma Dragon. I was looking forward to this one. Could the Calicos fit snugly under the dragon tank and dish out some pain to his ankles while not getting hit? Kind of. There was always a few a little too far out taking damage, but this fight was over quickly, so I would actually have to test this out a little bit more during the Beta Dragon fight. Down goes the Gamma Dragon with a clean sweep of the greens. I restocked their veggie cakes, patched their boo-boos, and activated the blue portal. It was time to take on the Beta Megapithecus. There were a few moments in this fight where I held my breath because he was causing some serious knockback, and at one point half the bovine brigade was near the drop-off. The damage output from these rocks being thrown is fantastic. They don't do it as fast as you can if you're riding the Chalicotherium, but they mix in primary attacks as well. I really enjoyed how easy it was to maneuver these guys. The squad took very little damage during this fight, and they just kept laying it on thick to pull off another easy win and slap another pass on the scorecard. The herd of horse sloths quickly moved into position during the Beta Broodmother fight. I kinda screwed up the maneuvering on my part in the beginning, and the Calicos took some unanswered shots, but ultimately they were able to get into position with no problem. The Beta Broodmother was down to 50% health in the blink of an eye, and there was no escape. At this point, I was super pumped for what was to come because I didn't have much experience with this team prior to this. They were winning my heart over though, just like they won this fight and earned a pass. Beta Dragon time, the great filter into the final rounds. This fight started off pretty strange. The Beta Dragon landed, and right when I finally got the crew in position, he took off, stayed low to the ground, landed a couple seconds later, and then came right back at me. The Calicos answered in kind though. They swarmed his ankles and started putting a hurting on him. If you've noticed, we're now using the saddles that match official server cap. It's 26 less armor than what we were using before, and I had some mild concerns that the Calicos would suffer because of it. Coming into this, I didn't think they'd last the beta dragon and would get beat by all the alpha bosses. The Chalicotherium proved me wrong big time. The beta dragon would wind up having to eat this fat loss, but not without taking some of the calicos with him. This made me worry about the alpha dragon fight slightly, but I was impressed enough with their 6th pass. With confidence flooding out of their mutant little horse hearts, it was time to take on the alpha bosses. First up, the Alpha Megapithecus. The calicos surrounded the big man early on, but his knockback proved troublesome in this fight too. There were a few close calls, but I truly feel like they performed better in this fight than they did with the Beta Megapithecus. Rocks were getting tossed every which way. Big rocks, little rocks. It was complete mayhem. The calicos were relentless and were full of bloodlust. They took this round and barely broke a sweat as the Alpha Megapithecus hit the floor and gave us another pass. The Alpha Broodmother was up next. This beastly woman is always a challenge and knows how to bring the pain. I came into this fight thinking that if the calicos could get through this with minimal losses, then they should be able to take on the Alpha Dragon and be our 3rd competitor to get a perfect score. The lighting was low and the glowing auras from the Courage Roar made it pretty difficult for me to see how banged up the donkey cows were. But it wasn't long before I started seeing the red text up top. Once she starts killing, there's usually multiple that die with every bite. She's seriously dangerous, and even with her health low, I got worried because calicos kept dropping. Just kidding. I only lost 3 and more than half the calicos left had a lot of health remaining. They stomped her into the dirt and earned us another pass. The Alpha Dragon, our final boss of the evening. If you remember, I did wind up losing a couple calicos during the Beta Dragon fight. The fire breath is the biggest factor during this, and we started off the fight taking a juicy one right to the face. In one of the more surprising Alpha Dragon battles, the calicos were able to knock off a substantial chunk of health before the dragon took off for the first time. Usually these smaller tames perform well because they can position themselves around the feet and dish out maximum damage while very little or even none of them get hit by the dragon. With more than a quarter of the health gone, the dragon took off and landed near the same spot, but slightly closer to the ruins. This time, he wouldn't be going anywhere. This is the 2nd fight so far that I've seen where he got pinned down near the ruins, so there might be something worth exploring there for a viable strategy. Take a look at the yellow numbers indicating damage that the dragon is doing. Barely see any? Exactly. The toe strategy works again, and the calicos are able to come out of this one relatively unscathed and earn a clean sweep of the board. Our 3rd competitor to do so. This episode was a lot of fun, and I think I may have a new favorite tame to use for boss fights. I appreciate everyone for watching, and I truly hope you enjoyed it. Check out the community tab and feel free to interact with some of the various polls I post occasionally. I love creating videos, and I always seek the feedback from my audience to help shape what I will be doing going forward. As always, if there's a dino that you'd like to see complete this challenge, let me know in the comments. If you like what you've seen, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.